This is TWiT.
Here is a stat they gave us that both Paul and I are scratching our heads over and trying to figure out. More than 100 million PCs have shipped in each of the last 8 quarters.
Wow.
And Windows continues to take share. Okay.
No, that should be like a
that's impossible.
record scratch. It's literally that's what I wrote in my article. It is literally impossible.
Well, 800 million new PCs
per quarter over
over 2 years.
800 million in 2 years.
It's impossible. It's impossible
for several reasons.
It's not true. It's just not true.
Well, why would they say it if it's a lie?
I know. They've got a way that they've
if it's
made
specious
this make
or
sense,
calumny. Right? Let's come up with some more lie synonyms.
What was hold on a second. Mary Jo came up with the perfect phrase. It's not a lie because it's technically true.
Right.
Are they including phones as PCs? Or, I mean,
no. So
tablets?
You know what?
We have theories.
We think what they're saying is we got 100 million PCs in each of the last 8 months, each of the last 8 quarters in the channel. Is our guess. Like, they're not talking about sales, right?
No,
they're talking about
Here's my problem with that. Now, if he had said, I still would have taken issue with this, but if he had said, in the past year, we sold 400 million. No, I guess it would have been, sorry. It would have been 200, right? For the past 4 quarters. We sold what am I doing? What's the actual number he gave? I'm sorry. It was 100 million per quarter. So in the past year, the past 4 quarters, we sold 100 million Windows licenses per quarter.
No, he didn't even say Windows licenses.
No, I know. But if he had said that, I'm changing it into something that could have been a fact.
Okay.
You could have been like, okay. Yeah. And the reason that could have been okay is twofold. One is there was a boom, for one thing. The pandemic triggered a PC buying boom. And secondly, there was a component shortage. So PC makers could have been buying licenses knowing that when they got the components and they could finally ship those computers out to customers. I would accept that for a year.
Yeah.
For 1 year.
What about this crazy idea? I have a crazy idea that I just thought
of. Go ahead. Yep.
Here's the actual statement. More than 100 million PCs have shipped. It doesn't say Windows PCs. It says PCs.
Okay.
So what if we're including Chromebooks? We're including Macs, right? Like, say we're including anything that can be called a PC.
Here's the thing. So we have companies.
I'm just making up crazy reasons.
I know, but let me give you some numbers. Let me give you some actual numbers, right? So Gartner said that in 2021, PC makers sold, and this includes Macs. Well, one of them doesn't include Chromebooks, but Macs, PCs, and Chromebooks, 339 million. IDC, 348.8 million. I averaged those numbers, 344.3 million. That's in calendar year 2021. We're making up, somehow there's another, and those include non-Windows PCs.
Right.
In both cases. But we'll say it's all Windows, fine. You still have to make up about 60 million. 60. And then you have to do it again.
They're rounding up.
The previous year, the number was lower. So I don't remember what it was, but let's say it was 305, 10, something like that. Whatever it was, you have to, now you have to make up another 70 to 80 million. And you add those two. This is coming up. This isn't coming up a little short. This is coming up way short. That number is completely inaccurate. I think you're right. It's interesting that he said, I'd have to find the exact language because he didn't say
100
Windows
million
licenses.
PCs have shipped.
Have shipped.
Yep.
Are they on a boat with some cars out in the middle of the ocean? What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's where it is. That's got to be where it is.
That number is not even close to being true.
I didn't even put this number in my story because I just thought I can't even, like, with a good conscience, put this number in my story. I know they said it, and I know they've got a way they're backing this number up, but they never explain.
Well, I'd love to see it because this is not the case.
Yeah.
This kind of remember they did something like that with Edge where they claimed that Edge had like X percent of something usage on, and you kind of did the math on it. You're like, no, this is not true. Even if you included every single person that used Windows, opened a PDF file once, this thing could not have been. This is not true.
Right. Well, here's the other number that we can't figure out. Okay.
Yep.
nearly 500 million monthly active users on our content feed, Microsoft Start. Okay, so Microsoft Start is the brand name for the thing that used to be MSN
before you explain it, the thing that should have gone through everyone's head is, what the heck is Microsoft Start?
No, people are tweeting that to me. People are like, what is Microsoft Start?
Right, because you're like, what is that? Right.
Yeah.
And what is it? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
So Microsoft Start is the rebranded name for MSN and Microsoft News feeds, right? They're available for Windows 10. In Windows 11, they're part of that widget panel. Mm-hmm. It's all those things we've been complaining about on the show, the bikini photos, the Cardi B is a tool of Satan, blah, blah, blah.
That's actually legitimate news. And I think
I just saw that yesterday. It's fresh in my mind, but...
not all of it is terrible, is what I'm saying. Anyway, it's garbage. So it's in the
500 million monthly active users.
Yeah, and how did they say it? Higher engagement. Yeah, strong engagement. No, where is it? There's nothing about engagement.
Yeah, strong engagement.
He said something like, "This was like bigger engagement than they expected." Right. You shouldn't expect 5 million people to use this thing. So. What is that? Again, we don't know how they're measuring this, but I have to think that a lot of the measurement is someone has opened this feed in Windows, clicked on a news story, and then I'm just projecting here, but I feel like most of them are like, oh God, what is this? And then they get rid of it. And is that, I guess they engaged with the thing, that's a form of engagement, but that doesn't sound like a monthly active user to me, but that's what they're talking about is 500 million people. Yeah. Who are these people? I want to meet some of these people. What are you doing with your lives? Remember when MSN used to claim big numbers for MSN. Remember that?
They did.
It's the reason it's still a thing, right? People supposedly use it.
Yeah. The reason it's still a thing also is it's very tied in with Microsoft advertising, right? And we've talked before about, Google is an advertising giant.
This was what I was just alluding to exactly.
And so Microsoft sits there and you got to be, Satya or Chris Kapp or Amy Hood, and you're looking at, you're like, look how much money Google makes from being an advertising company.
For doing
Why
nothing.
Can't we do this? And the way they're
making money on other people's content. Think about it. They're like a leech on the underbelly of a shark or something.
Well, Start is the same thing, right? Like if you go to the MicrosoftStart.com, there's a tab that says shopping. If you click on shopping, this is going to be where Microsoft sells custom ads, and ads will be will be the entire feed, right? Will be shopping. Right.
I don't understand. I can't refute this in any way other than to laugh and say it's ridiculous. It just doesn't sound right, but I don't have any. I don't have any.
We can't disprove it. I know we can't.
But this PC thing,
I would like to hear more on how they measured the PC thing. I really would like to hear more on that.
It was so specific. They could have really made it. They could have made it less questionable if they had said Windows. Left the PC part of it out. I would have been like, okay, that's high, but I don't know what. Maybe they have agreed. I don't know. I don't know how that works. Yeah. But when they said PCs sold, shipped, like, shipped. Is that what all the truckers were driving around with? Were they in the back?
Anybody who's tried to buy... No, anybody who tried to buy a PC during the pandemic knows what we're talking about, right?
Leo tried to buy a PC this week and he has to wait till July.
Forever.
I know.
Yeah.
Now, remember when my Surface Laptop 3 died and I went down to Best Buy? I'm like, okay, I'm just going to buy a PC and use it until I can get this thing fixed.
Right.
They had almost none. So that's why I'm like, how did this many ship if you couldn't even get the parts to make them and they couldn't stay in stock at retail? Like, where were they shipping? I don't know. That number just kind of stuck on. And the way they talked about it as 8 consecutive quarters, there's some trick in there. There's got to be a trick in the number.
Because it's certainly not an outright lie. It's
right. But there's some way they've got it so that they can claim it as true.
It is misrepresenting the facts. Yeah.
That's what one might call a lie.
A spin. It's spin.
It's spin. Yeah. It is spin. Yeah. And no explanation. And nobody, of course, none of the analysts asked about that because it's very interesting and telling when you're on these calls. The analysts only care about the cloud. They don't care about anything else. Pretty much.
Isn't that interesting? Well, for Microsoft, that's not so unreasonable.
The PC market has never sold 400 million of anything in a year. The highest peak of the PC industry was 365. Like that has never happened. So I don't know if because of the pandemic and there was this crazy demand, first with consumers and then more recently with commercial customers, PC sales shot through the roof. They even exceeded the best year ever of the PC industry. No one has ever reported that story, by the way. No analyst company has ever come out and said that this happened. But Microsoft is claiming it happened. I mean, I think they can only use, what numbers could they have? They could only have the numbers of Windows licenses that are going out the door. And maybe, listen, if they oversold Windows licenses, that tells me the next 2 years are going to be terrible for Windows because that's going to catch up with them. You know,
deferrals, right? Yeah.
That would make sense, though, because companies probably buy licenses by the bushel.
But, you know, Microsoft has this rich history of smoothing out revenues to Windows in particular. Remember, they used to be that 20 million a month
channel. It's in the channel. Yeah.
Well, we sold a little too many this month. We'll defer some of them for, quarter rather. We'll defer some for next quarter. Next quarter's a little light. We'll take some of that back. We'll kind of make the big peaks and valleys look a little smoother, This is not that, like this is, they're like, we're going all in. And that's why I sort of feel, maybe that's not exactly why, but I sort of said, don't you sort of feel like the bottom has to fall out for Microsoft at some point? Not that sales like fall, but rather that growth slows dramatically because eventually the pandemic kind of winds down. I don't know what we're calling this anymore, but it hasn't happened yet, Hasn't happened yet. I don't know. I'm confused by those numbers.
That number is confusing. It is.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear more. I would like to hear more.
Well, Xbox, I mean, same thing. I don't know if you have to genuflect or whatever, but Xbox Series X and S, 2 quarters in a row, they've taken share. Okay.
Right.
They are the market leader, which means they sold more than the other guys, I guess, in the US, Canada, UK, and Western Europe in this past quarter. There is news from MPD that Xbox was the best-selling console in the United States in that quarter, so that maps, that's good. But then they get, you get into like the like the cloud stuff, and it's like, what are they talking about here? They don't even they won't tell you how many Xbox Game Pass subscribers there are, but they will tell you how many hours they played. Roughly billions. They were billions of hours played, up 45% year over year. 10 million people. This is the only hard number we got. Have streamed games via Xbox Cloud Gaming. To be clear, Xbox Cloud Gaming is a feature of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, which is the most expensive version of that subscription. And that's the number we got. We just got the little subset. Like, not every person who's an Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscriber necessarily streams games, but 10 million of them have. And we didn't even get a hard number of the number of titles. Why can't you just tell me how anyone could go and count? But there were hundreds of titles in Xbox Game Pass. And it is another one of those, like obviously, more games from third-party publishers than ever before. That should always be true, right? Is there going to be a quarter in the future where there are fewer? It should always grow, right? Some of this stuff is just amazing to me.
Tell that to Netflix.
So big. Well, yeah, Netflix,